Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Possession Football. This season's Premier League has thrown up all sorts of questions. Arsenal are odds-on favourite, but we've seen them strong before. Can they finally hold their nerve when under threat? With Sunderland already looking a certainty to stay up, at least one non-promoted team will go down, and many big clubs such as Newcastle and Tottenham seem to be all over the place. New signings are always a big deal, especially, I find, in an odd-numbered year, where there is no major tournament in Europe to watch, as they fill the airwaves during the excruciating 2.5 months without meaningful men's football. A lot have performed very well, including Sunderland duo Nordi Mukiele and particularly Granit Xhaka, Leeds United freebie Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and leaders Arsenal's Martín Zubimendi. However, let's look at a starting 11 of players whose start to life in England hasn't gone to plan so far. Goalkeeper, Mads Hermansen. Okay, not everyone here is having their start to life in England. An honourable mention belongs to James Trafford, but there wasn't really another choice here. Mads Hermansen felt like an odd signing from the very beginning, with the 25-year-old Dane, capped at under 21 level, being signed by West Ham for £20 million from Leicester. Having been number one at Brøndby for 2 seasons in his homeland, Hermansen moved to the East Midlands in 2023, being their undisputed main goalie as they won the championship under Enzo Maresca. That led to his first season in the Premier League, where he was still first choice when not injured, playing 27 times for a rubbish Leicester team that ultimately went straight back down. West Ham were unsure about their keeper last season, with 32-year-old Alphonse Areola losing his place to Łukasz Fabianski, now 40, before winning it back, leading the Irons to make a move that they would hope ended their issues for good on the recommendation of new goalie coach Kasper Angerkren, who had previously worked with Hermansen at Brøndby. However, Hermansen was so bad they decided to put Areola back in nets after 4 games. A 3-0 loss away to newly promoted Sunderland on the opening day saw him ship 3 despite facing just 1.64 post-shot XG. That is to say, conceding over a goal more than would be expected. The third being particularly bad. Then in their first home game, they conceded 5 against Chelsea. Hermansen was again to blame after spilling a corner. Later on, in deep injury time, the few Hammers fans left sarcastically cheered when he claimed a cross. After a clean sheet against Forest, West Ham had a disastrous 3-0 loss at home to hated rivals Tottenham, with another goal going past Hermansen from a set piece. West Ham's consistent concessions from corners, including 3 against Chelsea, were in no small part thanks to Hermansen, which many attributed to his relatively small frame for a goalie of 1.87 metres or 6 feet and 2 inches, and with Graham Potter panicking, he benched him for Areola for their next match, a 2-1 loss at home to Palace. With Potter and his staff, including Ankergren, sacked after this match, replacement Nuno Espirito Santo has kept Areola as his starter for every game since, with Hermansen on the bench. And with West Ham out of the Carabao Cup, it seems impossible, injuries aside, that he will play, except in the FA Cup, which starts in January, by which time West Ham may just cut their losses and offload him, perhaps looking for a new goalie unless Espirito Santo is happy with Areola, which he might be considering their recent better form. Either way, that would mean his whole West Ham career is being in for 4 games, conceding 11, and being dropped. Right back, Jeremy Frimpong. Sorry, Liverpool fans, this video will not be the nicest viewing for you. Jeremy Frimpong, who can play anywhere on the right, was signed for £29.5 million from Bayer Leverkusen after 4.5 years on the Rhine. The Dutchman moved to England as a boy and joined the Man City Academy, moving for Celtic in 2019 for regular game time and spent 18 months there, being named Young Player of the Year in his only full season. After moving to Germany, he was part of the Invincible team that won the double in the 23-24 season, where he was named in the Team of the Season both in the Bundesliga and Europa League. After one more season, to replace longtime star in that position, Trent Alexander-Arnold, who left Anfield for Real Madrid. At the time, I thought it was a really good signing, although Alexander-Arnold was irreplaceable, and he scored in his debut in the Community Shield to put Liverpool 2-1 up against Crystal Palace, playing the full 90, but they were pegged back and lost on penalties. As the league season started, he made his Premier League debut at home to Bournemouth, but came off after an hour. I thought this was evidence of Arne Slot panicking, especially as Milos Kerkez on the other flank was removed, and Wataru Endo came on for Frimpong. In fact, Liverpool looked very exposed. Frimpong is extremely attacking and not known as a defender at all. In fact, he had a hamstring issue, which cost him the next 2 games as well as the internationals. With Dominic Calvert-Lewin covering, he only made a brief cameo in the first game back against Burnley, and after lasting an hour for their Champions League win over Atletico Madrid, was benched for the Merseyside derby. The big signing dropped for Connor Bradley, a man signed on a scholarship from Dungannon Swifts. His only other full 90 for Liverpool this season, up until December at least, was a 2-1 win at home to Southampton in the Carabao Cup, and Bradley and Szoboszlai both seemed favoured. He was on the bench in the next game against Palace and got given a rare start away to Galatasaray in the Champions League, interestingly on the right wing ahead of Szoboszlai. Having contributed nothing of note, he was hooked after an hour for Bradley as Liverpool lost 1-0. Mohamed Salah returned on the right for the next game against Chelsea. This has also affected his international career, where he was the starting right winger for the Netherlands, with Donjel Malen having taken his place on the right. Though Frimpong started against Malta, that game saw big rotation, and he was dropped for Malen against Finland. Back to club football, and again Bradley took his spot against Man United, but he kept his record of being first choice in the Champions League away to Eintracht Frankfurt. He lasted 19 minutes before getting an injury that kept him out for 12 games. He got half an hour in the 2-1 win over Spurs and then the full 90 in another 2-1 victory against Wolves. Frimpong played very well in that game, dancing past João Gomes and setting up Gravenberch for the opener. The Dutchman will hope his injury woes to disappear, but now that he's back, he needs to show better than what we saw in his opening couple of months at Anfield. Centre-back, Igor Julio. Igor Julio's time in England has been pretty tough. He came through the academy of Red Bull Brazil and then went to the sister club of that machine, Red Bull Salzburg, but was on loan for most of his time there, firstly at Wolfsberger and then Austria Vienna. Serie A came calling, with him first joining Spal and then Fiorentina, where he became a regular for 2 seasons. He was on the losing side as he played his current club, West Ham, in the Conference League final. That was his last game for Eviola, however, as Brighton came calling in the summer. It took a while for Julio to be trusted by Roberto De Zerbi, who seemed unsure about who should partner Lewis Dunk. An injury to Adam Webster helped Julio, who was rotated with Jan-Paul von Hecke. The next season, though, despite having a good run of games as a regular starter, saw a hamstring injury basically end his season in January, and von Hecke solidified his spot. The signing of Diego Coppola and Olivier Bossagli as options there meant it was time up for Julio, and after one game in the Carabao Cup, he was loaned to West Ham on deadline day. West Ham have been awful at the back, and by that point they had already conceded 11 in 4, which means Julio, a rotation option at a club which seems to be a lot more competent in Brighton, should have been quite high up in the pecking order at West Ham. Could anyone be worse than Jean-Claire Todibo, Konstantinos Mavropanos and Max Kilman, all of whom have been shocking at times? But he hasn't really had a chance. Graham Potter didn't play him until he was sacked. His debut came in Nuno Espirito Santo's first game against Everton in injury time. He didn't play for a month after that, and then just had sub-appearances against Newcastle and Burnley very late on to protect Leeds. He did get a full 90 minutes in a 2-2 draw with Bournemouth, where he was weak for the Cherries equaliser and hasn't played since. This is pretty remarkable. He got 90 minutes in the Carabao Cup against Oxford before being loaned out, and that means that 46.6% of his football this season has been with Brighton, who he left on the 1st of September. This stat would be one thing if he joined an Arsenal or a Man City as some sort of emergency backup option, but he's joined West Ham, who look awful at the back anyway, and still can't play in front of some utter dross. Not what he would be hoping for. Centre-back, Bashir Humphreys. Yes, Bashir Humphreys has been a transferred player, despite being at the same club as he was last season. The Chelsea youth product only played twice for that club, but spent time on loan at Paderborn, Swansea, and last season Burnley. A natural centre-back, Humphreys was most commonly used as a left-back for the Clarets, as they went up automatically under Scott Parker, until a hamstring injury ended his season, and also prematurely ended his England under-21 career. After his strong performances, he signed from Chelsea for £12 million, plus £2.7 million in add-ons. That hamstring injury took him out of the first part of the season, though, and he only managed 45 minutes in his first start, a Carabao Cup match at home to Derby. Even after the international break, he was benched. In a back 5, he's behind Hjalmar Ekdal, Maxime Esteve and Josh Laurent at centre-back, and Quilinci Hartman at left-back, and Lucas Pires at right back. He played his only full 90 minutes of the season in the Carabao Cup third round, but probably wishes he didn't, as a makeshift Burnley side lost 2-1 at home to League One Cardiff. The next game was away to City in the league, and he came on in the 88th minute with Burnley already 3-1 down. They lost 5-1, which isn't great. Oh yeah, and those 2 minutes were his Premier League debut. Worse was to come as he got injured again. He finally got a start in their 0-0 draw at home to Everton the other day, which means he has got another 90 minutes under his belt after all, as they got a rare clean sheet after switching to a back three. Burnley are struggling at the moment, and to be honest, could do with defensive reinforcements. When they spend a potential 50 million quid on someone and he plays a total of 2 minutes of league football, well, that can be the difference when you're in a position that puts points at a premium. Now that he's back, let's hope he can stay fit for the rest of the season, stay in Scott Parker's confidence, and bolster Burnley's survival hopes. Left back, Milos Kerkez. Sorry, Liverpool fans. Kerkez isn't the first red on this list, and he won't be the last. Kerkez's youth team was Győr in his homeland, but after breaking out for half a season in Hungary's second tier, he was snapped up by Milan. No one seems to know that he played for AC Milan, but he did, just not competitively, and after a year there decided to go to RZ for more opportunities. After 6 months with their second-tier youth team, he broke into the first team, becoming a Hungary regular and getting a move to Bournemouth. He had 2 seasons there and was exceptional last term, starting every league game and breaking into the team of the season. This time it's been tough, however. Kerkez made his first start in the Community Shield, which Liverpool lost on penalties to Palace after a 2-2 draw, but his Liverpool debut in the Premier League came in a 4-2 win over his old club Bournemouth. At right back, Trent Alexander-Arnold's shoes have not yet been filled by Jeremy Frimpong. At left back, though Robertson did not leave, unlike Alexander-Arnold, it's been understood that he's due replacing. Therefore, Kerkez set them back 40 million quid. Against the Cherries, it was tough, as he looked out of position a few times as the Reds looked vulnerable on the break. After an hour, he was hooked for Robertson, while Frimpong came off for Wataru Endo. It was only after these subs were made that Bournemouth bagged 2 on the counter. Therefore, perhaps Liverpool and Kerkez's struggles can not just be blamed on Kerkez himself, but Liverpool's style under Arne Slot. In the next game against Newcastle, Anthony Elanga had him on toast, but was much better against current leaders Arsenal. The next game against Burnley after the international break, but he picked up a pointless yellow card for diving and was hooked for Robertson before half-time, missing the Atletico Madrid game as punishment from Slot. He was back for the Everton game, though, and played well, but in their next league game against Palace was blamed for the Eagles' late winner, as he put the ball out for a score instead of simply clearing it. Kerkez was also criticised as Liverpool lost 1-0 to Galatasaray in the Champions League and was skinned by Chelsea's Pedro Neto in the next game, leading to an early substitution for Robertson. Amad Diallo... Look, I've run out of metaphors. Diallo won his battle with Kerkez in the Northwest Derby, which was the next game. Slot would bring Kerkez high up the pitch, and that would mean whenever there was a winger with good dribbling and speed, it would lead to big problems on the counter. But another problem is that he hasn't really done much going forward, with no assists. He hasn't had good relationships with Virgil van Dijk going back, or Cody Gakpo in attack. After this, he was benched again for the Frankfurt game in the Champions League, something they, by the way, won 5-1 in his absence, and then came back for the Brentford game. Dango Ouattara was the latest one to have him for breakfast. That's a good analogy. Kind of. And despite getting his first goal for the club, this was the exception, not the rule, and he was hooked again after an hour as Liverpool lost 3-2. The next game was a 3-0 loss at home to Palace in the Carabao Cup, where the Reds played a back 5. This should suit Kerkez, as he would have more protection and licence to come forward, but he did nothing. He was benched for the next game against Aston Villa as Liverpool returned to a back 4. In a run of 7 league games, it was the only one Kerkez didn't play. That was the one they won, and they lost the other 6. He was also benched for their win against Real Madrid in the Champions League. Yes, they won against Real Madrid without him, and got only 30 minutes in their loss to Man City. After the international break, he started against Forest, but was hooked again after 70 minutes at 2-0 down. He then did get a full 90 minutes, as his side lost 4-1 at home to PSV. Club legend turned pundit Steven Gerrard was furious with him for the second goal, as he was somehow beaten to the ball by Gus Till. Kirkez played well in his next game against West Ham, finally pocketing a star winger in Jared Bowen, but was replaced with a knock late on and only got small minutes in the next game against Sunderland. However, he was back for the Leeds match, which finished 3-3. There was actually some praise for Kirkez and criticism for Cody Hakpo for not using him after this game, but he was benched again in the win over Inter. There are some caveats for Kirkez. Firstly, the usual stuff about adapting to a new league and certainly new teammates. Secondly, the tactics didn't seem to fit him too well, and this may be adjusted either by the manager or the player himself who can adapt. Thirdly, everyone else at Liverpool seems to be struggling anyway. He had a good duel with Jan Zubimendi in the game, a 2-0 win at home to Brighton. And a lot of good has been said about him, with former Red Ray Houghton calling it his best performance. Since Liverpool have been more cautious in midfield, Kirkez has looked better and more confident, shown in his next game a 2-1 win away to Spurs. And against Wolves, he won 7 duels and had a 96% pass accuracy, as well as 4 tackles and 4 clearances. At international level, his bad form with his club hasn't really affected his career, starting every game and even getting an assist for Barnabas Varga in their 3-2 loss to Ireland. Despite his recent uptick in form for his club, 1 goal and no assists aren't good enough when you are meant to be an attacking fullback, especially when defensively you are getting found out often. Robertson has been playing far less but has a goal and an assist already. Here's hoping that his return to form is permanent. Right midfielder, Anthony Elanga. I praised his performance against Liverpool, but Elanga has not been good enough so far. He was a Man United youth product who was given his first chance in the last few games of the 2021 season, and over the next 2 campaigns became a rotation player for the Red Devils, while also beginning a Sweden career. In 2023, he joined Nottingham Forest and became a regular, scoring 11 and assisting 21 in 2 seasons on Trent's side, being able to play on both wings. This season, he joined Newcastle for a big sum of £55 million and started their opener away to Villa. A few minutes in, he had a great run down the wing for an early chance, but it was a 0-0 draw. As I said against Liverpool, he did well in the battle with Milos Kerkez. However, this did not lead to any final end product. He was dropped for the next game against Leeds, as Eddie Howe switched to a 3-5-2, meaning Kieran Trippier was used on the right side. He did get half an hour for Jacob Murphy, and again he was a bright spark without achieving something tangible. After the international break, the signing of Nick Voltemada would have suited him, as it would have mirrored Chris Wood in being a big old-school number 9, something he worked well with at the City ground. However, Murphy was still ahead of him against Wolves. Eddie Howe said it was simply because he needed to acclimatise himself and put him back in the starting lineup against Barcelona. Here he was strong and made chances for Harvey Barnes, who couldn't convert. However, after an hour, he was replaced by Murphy again. It made you think if only Newcastle had a proper striker, things might look different. However, he was back on the bench for the Bournemouth game, instead getting a start in the Carabao Cup against Bradford, where even in a 4-1 win, he couldn't pick out the right pass to get his direct goal involvement to count running. That put him on 007 for his Newcastle career, and he was again benched against Arsenal. Elanga made his clearest contribution in the next game, a 4-0 win away to Union Saint-Gilloise, where his cross wasn't cleared fully, allowing Sandro Tonali's effort to deflect off of Voltemada and in. He then earned a penalty for the second goal. This good performance put him back in against his old club Forest after 4 consecutive league games on the bench, but after 70 minutes he was replaced by Murphy again. After the break, he was in the starting 11 against Brighton, but was subbed at half-time for Murphy following another tough game. He was back on the bench for the foreseeable after that, with his only start until the next international break against Spurs in the Carabao Cup, with 5 appearances from the bench in there. It was the same after the break too against Man City and Marseille, but he finally got a start against Everton, his first in the league for over a month. He got his first assist when he pounced on a defensive error and played in Voltemada to make it 3-0. However, it was back to the bench for the next game against Spurs, where he was criticised after coming on for not seriously challenging Cristian Romero's late equaliser. He got a full 90 minutes, only his second one of the season against Burnley. Not much came for it, and he was back on the bench for their next game against Bayer Leverkusen. As he wasn't subbed on, incidentally, that was the first game where he didn't make an appearance, remarkably, as he had only started 10 times. After that, a 1-0 derby defeat against Sunderland let some of the filter come off from figures who support the club. Elanga started, but after an hour came off for Murphy as part of a triple sub, with Tonali and Anthony Gordon also hopes for Joe Willock and Barnes. Elanga was panned by club icon Alan Shearer, and like some others on this list, a main point of contention has been his physicality, which questions his suitability for a time where Derby in particular. He was back on the bench for their Carabao Cup win over Fulham and their league match against Chelsea, before a knock in the latter cost him the Man United game. He has got a goal this season for Sweden against Slovenia, being in and out of his national team. Overall, Elanga is a bit of an odd case. He's shown a lot of spark, and maybe he'll connect a bit better with Johan Visser than he has with Nick Voltemada. Let's be charitable and count the penalty he won, and say he has 2 assists and no goals. Many Newcastle fans think that he's a bit unlucky. There have been a few chances that weren't tucked away by his teammates, but when you sign a winger for 55 million quid, especially at Newcastle, you expect them to be a regular starter for the first point and a regular contributor, and it hasn't worked out. Not as criminal as some on this list, but Elanga is definitely in the flop column for now. Centre mid, John Arias. It's pretty remarkable how we haven't had a Wolves player yet, so let's fix that with John Arias. Arias was a youth product of Patriotas in Colombia, getting his break after a loan with second-tier Llaneros. He then went to América de Cali, but after struggling for game time moved to Santa Fe, where he attracted interest from Fluminense in Brazil. In his first full season with the Tricolor, he scored 16 goals as they won the Carioca and won it again next season. He also won the Libertadores with his club, being named in the team of the season as his side beat Boca Juniors. He also won the Bronze Ball at the Club World Cup as his side lost to Man City in the final. In 2025, his side were at the newly expanded version of the tournament, where he was brilliant, as his side knocked out Champions League runners-up Inter Milan en route to a semi-final exit. He also became a regular for Colombia, playing every game at the 2024 Copa America, as his country were only beaten in the final, in extra time, to world champions Argentina. Arias, therefore, was an exciting prospect to come to a Wolves who have lost Mateus Cunha as someone who can play on either wing or in the middle. He didn't have much time to make an impact in his debut, coming off the bench with his side already 3-0 down at home to Man City. However, he started as a 10 in the next game away to Bournemouth, although he was sacrificed after an hour for defender Santiago Bueno after a red for Tochi Gomes. After getting his first 90 minutes in Wolves' win over West Ham in the Carabao Cup, he was again an early casualty, hooked after an hour for Jean-Brick Bellegarde, with his side 3-1 down at home to Everton in the league. He was back on the bench again for their next league games against Newcastle and Leeds, 2 more losses, but he was given a new role in the Cup, playing on the right against Everton as Vitor Pereira switched to a more traditional back four. Arias looked much better, with a shot forcing a save, tucked in by Marshall Manetzi for the opener, as Wolves got a rare 2-0 win. The switch to a back four was permanent, and Arias started on the right away to Spurs. He still didn't look completely settled, but was at least able to kick on, and was important in the corner that gave Wolves the lead in a 1-1 draw, their first point of the season. He got another start in their other draw, 1-1 at home to Brighton, which gave them some hope going into the international break. But since then it has been back to square one, or perhaps square two, for Wolves and Arias. Against Sunderland, he started but provided little and was subbed off for Jackson Chachua, someone else who could have made this list, with his side chasing a goal at 1-0 down. He was subbed off even earlier, while his side were tied 2-2 against Burnley at home in a must-win. After not being included in their Carabao Cup tie, he bizarrely started as a striker against Fulham, but was subbed at half-time in a triple switch. It was clear by now Pereira had lost it and was sacked the day after. Interim coach Nathan Collins benched him for the next game against Chelsea, but Rob Edwards was appointed after the break. After another sub-appearance against Palace, he was back in the starting lineup against Villa. This game in particular was horrible from Arias. Jurgen Strand-Larsen gave Wolves a rare goal, but Arias was standing in Emi Martinez's line of sight and it was ruled out for offside. He then had a yellow card on Boubacar Kamara, which was checked by VAR and nearly turned into a red. No chances created, and 2 out of 7 duels won said it all. After coming off in the next game against Forest and Man United, he was back to the bench against Arsenal and Brentford. He wasn't even in the squad against Liverpool. Arias has genuinely been useless. He's created little and won little, and the only thing you can say is that all of his teammates have been rubbish too. Many are wondering why they signed someone who have never played in Europe before and is now 28. His national team career is being hurt as well. He was still used in the September World Cup qualifiers, but in October he was left out of the squad for the first time since 2022. He came back in November starting a friendly against New Zealand. I don't know when you ever hear a player somehow losing stature after going from the Brazilian League to the Premier League. A horrific signing for everyone involved. Centre mid, Florian Wirtz. Florian Wirtz will probably go down as a legend of his academy club, Bayer Leverkusen. He was given his first minutes there after the restart from COVID in 2020 and became their regular 10 for the next 5 seasons. He was in the Germany squad that won the Under-21 Euro in 2021 and soon got his taste of football with the senior team. In 21-22, he made the Bundesliga team of the season, and the next he was named Europa League Young Player of the Year. It was 23-24 where he would really write his legend though, scoring 18 and assisting 20 as his side won a domestic double and being the Bundesliga Player of the Season. He was also Europa League Young Player of the Year again. Even last season he scored 16 and assisted 15 and was named the Player of the Season again by the Footballers Union, although he lost out on the Bundesliga's official gong to Harry Kane. This was who Liverpool spent £100 million, potentially rising to £116.5 million for. It is quite obvious what calibre was expected for this price and with this record. It started perfectly in the Community Shield against Palace. Wirtz assisted Hugo Ekitike in the 4th minute to give the Reds the lead, and was man of the match even as Palace came back to draw 2-2 and win on penalties. But he was a fair bit weaker in his Premier League debut at home to Bournemouth. He had 2 main problems. Firstly, he took a bit too long on the ball, and second, he was losing duels. The physicality has been a recurring problem for Wirtz, which may actually be a good thing, as he has noticeably been bulking up in later games. It's an issue with an obvious fix. The taking time on the ball can also be coached out. In their next game against Newcastle, though, he won just 3 of 10 duels in another game where he struggled physically and was sub late on, and he also blanked against Arsenal. After the international break, Liverpool visited Burnley, and with them chasing the game against a 10-man Clarets, Wirtz was hooked for the 17-year-old Rio Ungamoa after another rather anonymous performance. Perhaps showing his problems being caused by moving to the Prem, he put in his best performance of the season in their Champions League opener against Atletico Madrid, creating the most chances and having the most touches in the opposing box in the game. However, Arne Slot showed just what he thought of Wirtz so far as he benched him for the Merseyside derby, but he was back next week against Crystal Palace, where a big chance missed was the only notable thing he achieved. It was another game where energetic defenders and midfielders pressed him out of the game, and another one where he was subbed, this time for Federico Chiesa with his side 1-0 down. Chiesa went on to score, and the fact that Wirtz was taken off so often with Liverpool chasing a goal showed Arne Slot thought that he was a negative influence in terms of finding a crucial goal, exactly what he was good at in Germany. His first full 90 was in the Champions League away to Galatasaray, where Liverpool lost 1-0. In the aftermath, club icon and pundit Jamie Carragher told Arne Slot to take out Wirtz, saying that he's affected the balance of the team, but did also note that Wirtz was young and could still go on to have a great career at Anfield. Wirtz was indeed benched for the next game against Chelsea, but did come on at half-time and played quite well, creating a chance for Mohamed Salah soon after coming on. After the international break, Liverpool hosted Man United, and it was another derby where Wirtz was benched. Frankfurt moved from his position in the 10 to the right wing. This was among Liverpool's best performances of the season, and Wirtz was quality in the second half. With his team 3-1 up, he made a great pass to assist Cody Gakpo, and then another for Dominic Szoboszlai. It's perhaps no coincidence that his best performance came in Germany, although even in this game he did lose possession for the Frankfurt goal. Back in the Prem, they visited Brentford, and Wirtz was back in the 10. They lost 3-2, Wirtz missed a big chance, and with them chasing the game at 3-1, he was subbed off for Joe Gomez, and then benched for the next game in the league against Villa. A rare game Liverpool won. In their win over Real Madrid, he started on the left, so he was used there for the Man City game too, where he was panned by Gary Neville, who said he looked like a little boy after a 3-0 loss, saying that City fullback Matheus Nunes mauled him. After another international break, he missed the Forest and PSV games through a muscle issue, but returned in the 10 against the struggling West Ham, where he was a lot better as his teammates behind him in the 6 dominated midfield and allowed him the freedom to express himself, a rare luxury in the Premier League. It was another quiet performance against Sunderland, although a missed kick did bounce off of Nordi Mukiele for an own goal in a 1-1 draw, technically being his first league assist in some sources. He was quiet again away to Leeds despite a chaotic game, which ended in a 3-3 draw, being hooked for Alexis McAllister after an hour. He was benched for their Champions League visit to Inter, but had an impact off it, going down under minimal contact from Alessandro Bastoni and earning a penalty converted by Szoboszlai. It was a bit contentious, but he felt his shirt pulled, and it won his team the game. Wirtz has been moved to the left-hand side for his last few games, starting with one at home to Brighton, and was praised for strong link-up play. Wirtz had another good performance in their 2-1 win away to nine-man Spurs, assisting Alexander Isak for the opener, and in his 23rd appearance for the Reds, he got his first goal in a dazzling performance, scoring Liverpool's second in a 2-1 win over Wolves. But it was Wolves. Either way, Wirtz is in his best form of the season at the moment, and it's hoped that he can finally show his stuff for the Reds on a more regular basis, and especially pop up with some more goals. He's still starting every game for Germany and got a goal in September against Northern Ireland and 2 assists in their crucial 6-0 win over Slovakia. He's growing physically stronger, and it'll be interesting to see how he does in the absence of Alexander Isak, with Hugo Ekitike, another Bundesliga import, and a rare Liverpool player not to be in contention for this video, perhaps linking up with him better. It's also interesting that his stronger performances have come after a switch from the 10 in a league where the midfield is often congested to the wings as well. It does seem to be something I'm saying a lot for the Liverpool players, that they've been really bad, but in the last few games they've picked up. So there is plenty of hope for Florian Wirtz, but for now he's still on this list. Left midfielder, Jacob Ramsey. Jacob Ramsey was a boyhood Aston Villa player, joining at the age of 6, coming through their academy to make his debut as a sub for the then Championship Villains. Boy, that feels weird looking back, but it wasn't even that long ago. Anyway, as a 16-year-old against West Brom in 2019, Villa were promoted, but in the 1920 season he got another game against Fulham in the FA Cup off the bench before a loan to League One Doncaster, playing 7 games before the league was ended early thanks to COVID. He broke into the first-team squad in the 2021 season and became a regular starter the season after that. Moving from central midfield to the left in the 22-23 campaign, he scored 6 and assisted 8, but after an injury hit 23-24 returned last campaign to score 4 and assist 7. He was also part of the England under-21 team that won the Euros in 2023. Ramsey's sale to Newcastle for £43 million was mostly seen as PSR motivated, and many were unhappy that the rules caused an academy prospect to go. Or I should say academy graduate, not prospect. He already proved himself. Anyway, for Newcastle, it was a bit of a gamble for a team that needed attacking impetus, especially after the departure of Alexander Isak. Ramsey was transferred after the opener, which was incidentally between his old club and his new one. That meant his first game was against Liverpool, getting 15 minutes after an injury for Joelinton. Against Leeds, he got his first start, but came off at half-time because of an injury and a boring 0-0 draw. That caused him to miss the 7 games in between the September and October internationals before returning in Newcastle's 2-1 loss away to Brighton, getting 20 minutes off the bench. He started in their 3-0 Champions League win at home to Benfica, but made just 18 passes and won 3 out of 7 duels before being replaced by Joelinton after an hour. Physicality is key to any Prem side, and that is true of Newcastle as much as anyone. And Eddie Howe has talked openly about getting Ramsey to the physical stature of the Magpies. He was benched against Fulham, but did get a Carabao Cup start against Tottenham as Newcastle won 2-0. In the next league game against West Ham, Ramsey was benched but part of a triple half-time switch as Howe panicked with his side 2-1 down. He was ineffective as Newcastle went on to lose 3-1. Ramsey got his most minutes in the league up to that point against Brentford as Joelinton went off early, but again did little as his side lost 3-1 again. After another international break, it was back to the bench for Ramsey in the Man City game as Joelinton returned, and he got just 20 minutes away to Marseille and at home to Everton, and none at all in the next game against Spurs. He got a rare start and a sole league 90 minutes in their next game at home to Burnley, which Newcastle won 2-1. He had a pretty quiet game, made 37 of 38 passes, which seems good before you realise that hints to a nervousness and lack of risk-taking, and with his team 2-0 up against the 10-man Clarets, they gave away an injury time penalty for handball, which Zion Fleming scored, leading to a nervous ending for Newcastle.
He was given very little time against Bayer Leverkusen and none at all against Sunderland in the derby, before returning in the Carabao Cup quarter-final against Fulham for the whole game. He played quite well, despite not having the most attacking impetus, showing enhanced physicality and helping a rotated Magpies get over the line to beat Fulham 2-1 in a game where both Sandro Tonali and Joelinton were benched. He was rewarded with another start against Chelsea, and Howe said that it's an elite quality that he rarely loses the ball, but he needs to start impacting the final third with goals and assists, perhaps advising Ramsey to take more risks. He started again in their last game, a 1-0 loss to Man United, lasting 70 minutes before being replaced by Joelinton. However, at this moment in time, Ramsey has not yet locked down a regular starting place, and those last two starts in the league represent half of his total all season. He's not been responsible for a goal or an assist, unless you count the penalty he gave away. He went for 45 million quid and has been exclusively playing in the middle, as Anthony Gordon, who has not played that well, is still considered locked in on the left. It may well be that, long term, he replaces one of Newcastle's ageing trio of Bruno Guimaraes, Sandro Tonali and Joelinton, possibly the latter. However, for 45 million quid, he's started rarely, picked up an injury that cost him 7 games, and not really made the team much better. Newcastle spent over £250 million in the summer and look worse for it. I've already talked about Elanga and Ramsey, while Johan Visser was injured for most of the season, and though he's well liked, Nick Voltemada has blown hot and cold. Malik Chiao has been decent, but hardly earth-shattering. An odd summer for Newcastle.
Striker, Jurgen Strand Larsen. Jurgen Strand Larsen signed for Wolves on a permanent after starring on loan last season. The Norwegian was an academy player of Sarpsborg in his homeland, scoring a hat-trick in his first ever senior game in a 10-1 win over Drobak Frugen in the Norwegian Cup back in 2017 as a 17-year-old. After a loan to the AC Milan youth team, that's 2 players here who no one ever knew play for AC Milan. Anyway, he got some more senior appearances in his homeland in the 2018 season and became a regular by 2019. Halfway through the 2020 season, he was signed by Groningen in the Netherlands, who use a normal European season calendar, so it was the start of a new season there. He shone with 9 goals and 6 assists, and even made his debut for Norway in a Nations League game against Austria. 17 goals the next season earned him a transfer to Celta Vigo, for whom he scored 5 and assisted 6, before being the club's top scorer with 13 in the 23-24 season. His goals undoubtedly making the difference for a side that stayed up by just 8 points. That earned him a loan to Wolves with an option to buy. He played every game last season apart from 4 missed with injury and a sole rest in the Carabao Cup. He was brilliant as he scored 14 and assisted 4. The Athletic made a so-called alternative team of the season at the end of that campaign for players who don't get the headlines but played well. They noted his fox-in-the-box role, with 96% of his shots coming from inside the area and his best in the league, 62% shot accuracy, and his second-best shot conversion, with 25% only bested by Chris Wood. They wrote, Wolves may have finally found Raul Jimenez's successor. Therefore, it was no wonder that they activated a 23 million quid option to buy and even rejected 55 million at the time for Newcastle to take him off their hands. I remember watching a HITC Sevens video where host Alfie Pottsharmer noted that it shouldn't be surprising they rejected that money because he could be the difference between staying up and relegation, which is obviously worth a lot more than £55 million. How they must regret that now. Strand Larsen started their opener against Man City, where they lost 4-0 at home, and amidst the links with Newcastle, stayed professional and played against Bournemouth, though contributed nothing and was replaced by Hwang Hee-chan late on with his side chasing a goal. The next game came home to West Ham in the Carabao Cup, and with his side 2-1 down, he came on with 15 minutes to go. We saw the old Strand Larsen in that game as he scored a brace to rescue his side's cup campaign. However, an injury ruled him out of their next 2 matches. He came on at half-time in their next game against Leeds, but by then they were already 3-1 down. He was back at it in their Carabao Cup win over Everton, and then in their league against Tottenham in their 1-1 draw. They got a draw in their next game against Brighton, but after the international break they visited Sunderland and lost 2-0. Vitor Pereira noted that he was playing through the pain barrier after that injury picked up earlier and was not fully fit. He was given the armband against Burnley and with his side 2-0 down, led from example by converting a penalty after Santiago Bueno was fouled. They brought it back to 2-2 but lost thanks to an injury-time Lyle Foster dagger. But Strand Larsen and Pereira were caught arguing with fans at Molineux who were singing "Sacked in the Morning" towards the Portuguese gaffer. After being benched for their Carabao Cup quarter-final defeat to Chelsea, he was back in the starting lineup for their game against Fulham, although he could have set up a deck chair and played Candy Crush on his phone as they lost 3-0 and Pereira was sacked. It was another 3-0 loss to Chelsea under interim manager Nathan Collins, before Rob Edwards came in after the November international break. I can't be bothered to go game by game anymore, you know what happened. Played 90 minutes as they lost 3 more games in a row without scoring against Palace, Villa and Forest. To be fair, against Villa, he did put it in the net, but as I said earlier, it was disallowed because John Arias blocked Villa goalie Emiliano Martinez's view from an offside position. In the Forest game, he had the least touches of an outfield player to last the full 90 with just 22, and completed just 7 of 14 passes, making just 1 into the final third. In the next game against Man United, he was subbed off for Tolu Adukadare, another one who, to be honest, could have been on this list, after 70 minutes with his side 3-1 down. The toxic Molineux crowd, which saw thousands boycott the first 15 minutes, sarcastically cheered his removal, and he was about to react before Edwards hastily put an arm around him. In a rare good performance for Wolves away to Arsenal, he was subbed after 70 minutes for Arakadare, with the score still goalless. Something that wouldn't happen to the talisman striker last season. With Wolves down 2-0 against Brentford, Quimeen Kelleher brought down Matt Doherty in the box. Strand Larsen stepped up and looked uninterested, casually putting it straight at Kelleher, leading to huge boos at Molineux. With Wolves' relegation all but secured, they are keen to get rid of his assets before they plummet in value, especially considering Wolves will have to rebuild for the Championship, and many thought he's performing like someone who knows he is off soon. After that Brentford game, Sky Sports column The Debrief noted that Strand Larsen has always been a limited striker, one that doesn't create chances for himself, but gets on the end of what others serve up for him. The most notable contributor was shadow striker Mateus Cunha, who joined Man United in the summer, while fellow departees Ryan Ait-Nouri, Nelson Semedo, and Pablo Sarabia were also those who linked up well with Strand Larsen. Players like Arias and Fer Lopez have failed to contribute in the same way. Strand Larsen scored 0.48 MPG per 90 in the league last season, but hasn't netted a single one this time, with his non-penalty XG crashing from 0.36 to 0.08 per 90. He's gone from 1.87 to 1.27 shots, 0.73 to 0.37 chances created, and 2.62 to 1.37 hold-ups. For their last game against Liverpool, he was benched for Arakadare and only came on after an hour for Hwang Hee-chan, with his side chasing the game at 2-1 down. Continues to be an option for Norway, although he's never been a regular starter, even scoring against Italy after coming on in the 89th minute. The only good thing about this transfer is the fact that Wolves will probably get a lot of money back, perhaps even more than their initial fee, for Jurgen Strand Larsen. But he has stunk up a already rubbish team, and it's been proven he needs the right connections to succeed. At Wolves, he doesn't have any connections. Striker, Alexander Isak. Some new strikers have played worse than Alexander Isak this season, but they didn't cost 125 million quid. The Swede broke into his boyhood team AOK as a teenager and scored 13 goals in his debut 2016 season, earning a move to Borussia Dortmund. He was never really given an opportunity at the Westfalenstadion and got a loan move to Eredivisie Willem II, for whom he scored 14 in the 18-19 season as they reached the KNVB Cup final. Real Sociedad were next, on a permanent, getting double figures in each of his 3 seasons in the Basque Country, and becoming a Sweden regular too. He got his hands on the Copa del Rey in his first season, being the competition's top scorer, scoring a brace away to Real Madrid in the quarterfinal before they beat Athletic Club in a Basque Derby final in Sevilla. In 2022, he moved to Newcastle, where his star rose further. He bagged 11 in his first season, despite missing the first half through injury, and then scored 25 in 23-24. He went even better the season after that, scoring 27 as Newcastle won the Carabao Cup. Isak scoring what turned out to be the decisive goal in a 2-1 win over Liverpool at Wembley. But this season, he effectively went on strike to force a move to the Reds, leading to the Geordies who once adored him, viewing him furiously as a traitor. By then, 3 games had already gone, and he missed the first one in the league against Burnley due to fitness. He made his debut against Atletico Madrid in the Champions League, lasting an hour with just 4 touches in Atleti's box and 3 of 8 duels won. Isak was benched at home to Everton, coming on with 20 minutes to go as the Reds were already 2-0 up. He did get a start in the Carabao Cup against Southampton and got his first goal when Federico Chiesa picked up on a poor back pass by the Championship side's goalie Alex McCarthy, cutting back to Isak. He only lasted the first half, and it was clear that Arne Slot was managing his minutes after the Swede missed pre-season due to his mutiny at Newcastle. The next game was away to Palace, where he lasted 85 minutes in a famous 2-1 loss. In the first half, he completed just one pass and was kept out against a stubborn Palace who overloaded the defence and played successfully on the counter-attack. He still had some opportunities, but registering two big chances missed before teenager Rio Ungamoa came on for him, with the side 1-0 down and chasing a goal. He came on for half an hour in the Champions League defeat to Galatasaray, but completed just two passes and made 4 touches. By now, the press and fans were already circling in on Isak. But he did start against Chelsea, assisting Cody Gakpo for the equaliser before coming off late on. After the international break, Isak's minutes were still being managed, and he lasted just 70 in their 2-1 defeat at home to Manchester United. Against Frankfurt, he came off at half-time with a groin injury, missing the next 4 games, taking him up to the next international break. The first game back was at home to Forest, but he had just 14 touches in 70 minutes as Liverpool lost 3-0. He also managed to lose possession 7 times. That is, once for every 2 touches. And he completed no dribbles. Arne Slot confirmed his minutes were still being managed against PSV, but he did start away to West Ham. He had a few chances in the first half before finally putting Liverpool ahead in their 2-0 win away after Cody Gakpo cut back. The good feelings regarding Isak didn't last long, as he made just 1 pass in the first half against Sunderland, although did look a bit better in the second half after Gakpo was replaced by Mohamed Salah. He was only given 5 minutes in the next game against Leeds, but did start away to Inter. He was hooked after 70 minutes after having an awful game, winning 2 of 6 ground duels and having just 25 touches as Liverpool won 1-0 after he came off. He was on the bench for their next game against Brighton too after picking up a knock, and also came on in their next game against Spurs at half-time. With Tottenham down to 10 men and the scores goalless, Florian Wirtz found Isak, who gave Liverpool the lead. But Isak was taken out by Mickey van der Ven and is now injured. Isak remains a high-profile player and a starter, and sometimes captain for his country, but there have been some key themes for him at Anfield. Firstly, his entire time he's been managing minutes. He missed pre-season at Newcastle and came to Liverpool out of fitness, having been yet to play a full 90 minutes all season. The little niggle he picked up at Frankfurt meant that issue has been perpetual, with him unable to establish a rhythm. But another key feature is a lack of goals, with just 3, one of which was against Championship Southampton in the Carabao Cup. He also has just 1 assist, and at times he is a complete passenger. When he's back, they'll have to slowly reintegrate him again, and it's a shame because we all know how good he can be once a rhythm has been established. Well, that's my 11 of flops. If it had a manager, Ange Postecoglou would take it for his time at Forest, with Thomas Frank and Rob Edwards as the assistants. Nearly every team has some honourable mentions. Victor Gyökeres has come in for some criticism at leaders Arsenal, while James Trafford's stint as Man City #1 lasted about 3 games. Evan Guesson hasn't done much at Aston Villa, while Giorgi Mamadashvili has also gotten a bit of criticism from Liverpool fans. And Giovanni Leone picked up a big injury. Alejandro Garnacho is yet to justify £40 million at Chelsea, and Jamie Gittins cost even more, while stretching the boundary a bit would mean Club World Cup edition Liam Delap would also be criticised. At Man United, Matthias Cunha has been indifferent at best, and Benjamin Šeško has been even worse, while Habib Diarra and Arthur Masuaku have felt like rare misses for Sunderland. Brentford signings have gone well, apart from a pointless loan move for Reece Nelson, while at Palace, Yeremy Pino has underperformed in attack. Fulham have dodged inclusion by hardly signing anyone, but Tiano Barry and Tyler Dibbling haven't been great for Everton. I've been through Newcastle's players. While it's pretty remarkable Spurs aren't on the list, with Mohamed Kudus failing to build on a great debut against Burnley, Loni Randall Kolo Muani contributing little, and Xavi Simons flattering to deceive, topped off with that red against Liverpool. Bournemouth haven't seen too much after spending £25 million each on Amin Adli and especially Ben Gannon-Doak, while at Forest the 9-figure sum on Dan Ndoye, James McAtee and Amari Hutchinson has not been worth it. West Ham are lucky to only feature twice, with Jean-Claire Todibo in particular fortunate to miss out, while Armando Broja probably hasn't been worth an 8-figure sum for Burnley. Every Wolves signing not featured deserves a mention. David Muller-Wolfer, Fer Lopez, Jackson Chachua, and even Tolu Arokadare. Congratulations to the 3 teams that dodged inclusion on even this section: Fulham, Brighton, and Leeds. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching, and
I hope you enjoy. There's more videos on my channel. If you're interested, please subscribe to it. Thanks a lot.